Imagine this. You're sitting across from someone who has never raised their voice at you. Not once. They've never insulted you, never sworn, never slammed a door. They're calm, controlled, polite. They look at you with that soft expression people call mature. They listen with the patience of a saint, and when you speak, they nod like they truly understand you. But something inside you doesn't relax. It tightens, because the longer you sit there, the more you feel it is not love, not warmth, but pressure. A quiet pressure that doesn't come from aggression. It comes from the strange feeling that you're being handled, like a fragile object, like a person they already know how to fold. And you can't even explain why you feel uneasy, because on paper, this person is perfect. If you tried to describe the discomfort to someone else, you'd sound paranoid. What did they do? Nothing. They said something rude? No. They hurt you? Not directly. So why does their kindness feel like a trap? Why does their softness feel strategic? Why do you feel guilty simply for existing around them? That's the first sign. Not that they're cruel, but their goodness comes with invisible rules, and those rules are designed to control you. See, most people think danger looks like rage, a loud voice, a violent hand, a cold expression, a brutal insult. We're trained to fear obvious threats, but the real predators don't walk into your life like monsters. They walk in like angels. They don't demand your trust. They earn it, slowly, carefully, beautifully. Because the nicest people, the ones everyone praises, the ones who always mean well, are often the most dangerous kind. Not because kindness is evil, but because kindness is the perfect camouflage. A knife doesn't look terrifying when it's wrapped in velvet. A cage doesn't feel like a prison when it's padded with comfort. That's the trick. You don't feel trapped, you feel taken care of. And that's why you stay longer than you should. Think about it. The loud, angry person reveals themselves quickly. They explode early. They show you the monster in the first act, so you know what you're dealing with. But the nice person? They don't explode. They smile. They don't insult you. They disappoint you. They don't hit you. They withdraw warmth until you beg for it back. And every time you feel hurt, you blame yourself. Because they're so good at appearing reasonable that you start wondering if you're the problem. You start thinking, maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe I'm overreacting. And that's exactly what makes them dangerous. Because they don't destroy you with violence. They destroy you with confusion. A truly dangerous, nice person doesn't scream. They stay composed while you fall apart. They speak softly while your mind burns. They hold eye contact like a therapist, but underneath it, something feels off, like they're not connecting with you. They're studying you, mapping you, learning the exact language that disarms you. Because kindness isn't always love. Sometimes it's a tool. Sometimes it's a performance. Sometimes it's a way to create moral superiority, a position of power. Think about how untouchable a good person becomes. If they're polite, if they're generous, if they're respected, who will believe you if you say they're hurting you? No one expects poison to come in a beautiful bottle. No one expects the knife to be carried by the one who says, "I just want what's best for you." So when they cut you, they do it clean. And they make you apologize for bleeding. And the scariest part? They often don't even look like villains to themselves. They believe they're doing the right thing. They believe their control is care. Their manipulation is guidance. Their emotional pressure is love. And you become their project. Something to shape, to fix, to improve, to polish into what they think you should be. And at first, you might even like it, because it feels like attention. It feels like being chosen. Like finally someone sees your potential. But slowly, subtly, you start losing your freedom. Not through force, but through emotional debt. Because they've been so good to you, you don't feel allowed to disappoint them. You don't feel allowed to leave. You don't feel allowed to say no. And the day you try, that's when the real face appears. Not in rage, but in the cold. A calm punishment. A gentle smile that now feels like a warning. And you realize something terrifying. Their kindness was never unconditional. It was an investment, and now they want returns. This is the paradox nobody talks about. The most dangerous people aren't always hateful. Sometimes they're beloved. Sometimes they're praised. Sometimes they're the ones everyone trusts because they mastered the art of looking harmless. But harmless isn't the same as safe, and the person who never raises their voice might be the one quietly rewriting your identity, piece by piece, until you don't even recognize the version of you that stays. And the question is, have you ever felt that? That strange discomfort around someone who has done nothing wrong, yet somehow makes you feel smaller every time you leave them. Good, because that discomfort isn't paranoia, it's instinct. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing something terrifying. You don't know when it started, but you've been editing yourself. Not dramatically, not obviously, just subtly. You're choosing your words more carefully, filtering your emotions before they reach your mouth, hesitating before you speak your truth, because somewhere deep inside, you already know, if you say the wrong thing, they won't yell, they'll smile. That calm, patient smile, the one that makes you feel like a child throwing a tantrum, and you hate that feeling more than anger, because anger feels like conflict, but their smile feels like judgment. It feels like you're standing in front of someone who is morally above you. And that's how the nice person becomes dangerous. They don't dominate you through fear, they dominate you through goodness. This is the kind of person who's always understanding, always reasonable, always trying to keep the peace. They speak in soft tones. They avoid harsh language. They say things like, "I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. I thought you were better than this. I'm only saying this because I care." And the words hit you like a slow poison. Because what are you supposed to do? If someone screams at you, you can push back. But how do you push back against virtue? How do you fight someone who's calm while you feel emotional? How do you argue with someone who constantly frames themselves as the mature one, the responsible one, the good one? You can't. Not without looking like the villain. That's the genius of the mask. A truly dangerous, nice person doesn't need to control your body. They control your reputation. They control your image of yourself. They control the story. Because the good person mask is not just a personality trait, it's a social weapon. It makes them untouchable. Think about it. If someone is known as kind, gentle, helpful, selfless, then you become the problem the moment you question them. You become the ungrateful one, the paranoid one, the dramatic one. Even if they're quietly destroying you behind closed doors, even if they're draining your confidence, even if they're steering your life like a puppet master with invisible strings. That's why this kind of danger lasts longer, because everyone protects it, including you, especially you. And here's where it gets even darker. The nicest people often don't control you through cruelty, they control you through obligation. They give you help you didn't ask for. They do favors, they sacrifice, they show up when you're weak, and suddenly you feel like you owe them, not money, your loyalty, your agreement, your silence. Because once someone becomes your rescuer, it becomes psychologically hard to see them as a threat. You start thinking, they've done so much for me. They've been there for me when nobody else was. They're good people, and maybe they are. But here's the question that exposes everything. Are they good, or are they good at being needed? Because those are two different things. A truly good person helps you and feels happy when you grow beyond them. A dangerous nice person helps you and then punishes you for becoming independent. This is why the kindest looking people can trap you so deeply. They don't need chains. They build a mental prison out of gratitude. You can't leave without feeling like a traitor. You can't disagree without feeling like you're hurting them. You can't set boundaries without feeling cruel. And that's exactly what they want. Because a person who feels guilty is easy to control. Now let's go deeper. Why does this work so well? Because your brain has a weakness. You instinctively trust calmness. You associate a composed voice with truth. You assume emotional control equals wisdom. So when they speak gently, your nervous system starts obeying them before your mind even understands why. Their softness lowers your defenses. Their kindness makes you vulnerable. It's like the mind says, they're safe, but the body says, something is wrong. And the more kind they act, the more confused you become for feeling uneasy. That confusion is the doorway. That confusion is where you lose yourself. Because once you doubt your instincts, you become programmable. And a dangerous, nice person knows this. They know exactly how to make you question yourself. They'll never say, you're wrong. They'll say, I'm not sure that's true. They'll never say, you're crazy. They'll say, maybe you're just stressed. They'll never say, I'm controlling you. They'll say, I just don't want you to make a mistake. They don't confront you directly. They plant seeds, and the seeds grow into self-doubt. Eventually, you start doing something tragic. You stop trusting your own emotional reality. You stop trusting your own memory. You stop trusting your own inner compass. And when that happens, you can be guided anywhere. This is where the nice person becomes the most dangerous, because now they don't even need to manipulate you actively. You've internalized their voice. You've started policing yourself for them. You've become the prison guard. And here's the worst part. A dangerous, nice person will always look innocent when you finally snap, because they've been calm the whole time. So when you finally explode, you look unstable, you look irrational, you look abusive, and they look like the victim. They look like the saint who tried so hard. That's when the trap closes completely, because now you even start questioning yourself. Maybe you are the problem. Maybe you are too much. Maybe you really don't deserve kindness. And that belief is the deepest form of control. So the question becomes, what exactly is hiding underneath this kindness? What's the real engine behind the softness? Why does it feel like there's something predatory beneath the gentleness? In the next part, you'll see it clearly, because there's a specific psychological pattern behind the most dangerous, nice people. And once you recognize it, you'll never be fooled again. Imagine you're standing in a room where the air feels clean. No shouting, no chaos, no danger, just calmness. But the calmness is strange. Not the calmness of peace, the calmness of control. Like you're in a museum, and the person in front of you is making sure nothing breaks, including you. They speak softly, they act mature, they never lose composure. And yet, you always leave them feeling slightly ashamed, slightly wrong, slightly smaller. And that's the moment you should ask yourself a question most people never dare to ask. What kind of person needs you to feel small in order to feel safe? Because that is the dark core behind certain nice people. They don't want to destroy you, they want to contain you. They want you strong enough to admire them, but not strong enough to leave. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Not everyone is kind because they love people. Some people are kind because kindness gives them power. It gives them leverage. It gives them a position of moral superiority. It gives them a clean image they can use like armor. And once someone becomes known as the nice one, they can do almost anything behind the scenes. Because nobody believes the nice one is capable of harm. That reputation becomes a shield, and you become the secret battlefield. Now, let's talk about what's happening psychologically. There's a very specific type of nice person who is not actually peaceful. They're simply terrified of conflict. Not because they're morally evolved, but because conflict exposes them. Conflict forces truth into the open. Conflict reveals motives. Conflict breaks illusions. So instead of being honest and direct, they become strategic. They become the kind of person who never attacks you directly. They influence you indirectly. They reshape you quietly, because they need to stay clean. They need to stay innocent. They need to stay admirable. So they can't be seen as controlling, they can only be seen as caring. That's why their control is subtle. It comes through tone, through facial expressions, through pauses, through concern. They'll say things like, "I'm just worried about you. I don't think that's a good idea for you. I don't want you to get hurt. I'm only telling you because I love you." And if you resist, they don't punish you with rage. They punish you with something far more psychologically devastating: withdrawal. They remove warmth. They remove approval. They remove affection. And your nervous system immediately notices, because humans are wired to fear disconnection. We fear it more than pain, more than shame, more than being wrong. We fear being alone. And a dangerous, nice person knows that. So they don't need to hurt you physically. They just need to make you feel like you're about to lose them. This is the trap. They train you to associate obedience with connection and independence with abandonment. So every time you take a step toward your freedom, your body feels anxious. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because your brain thinks, if I become my own person, I will lose love. That's the deepest form of psychological manipulation. Not forcing you, but conditioning you. And once that conditioning sets in, they don't even have to fight you, because you start fighting yourself. You start shrinking your personality in advance. You stop saying things that might cause tension. You stop expressing emotions that might make them uncomfortable. You stop pursuing goals that might make them feel insecure. You become smoother, softer, easier, more manageable, and you don't realize it's happening until one day you wake up and feel like a stranger inside your own life. So why do some nice people do this? Because at the center of this personality type is a hidden hunger. They need to be needed. Not occasionally, constantly. They want to be the emotional gravity in your life, the person you depend on, the person you return to, the person whose approval decides whether you feel worthy. Because if you stop needing them, their power disappears. And if their power disappears, their identity collapses. That's why they panic when you change. That's why they get weird when you grow. That's why they act supportive, but somehow you always feel guilty for succeeding. They don't say, "Don't leave me," out loud. They just make sure your freedom feels like betrayal. And here's where things get chilling. Sometimes they genuinely believe they're protecting you. That's what makes this so dangerous, because they're not consciously thinking, "I want to control you." They're thinking, "I'm trying to keep you safe." But safe is often just another word for predictable, reachable, dependent. Because when you're independent, you are uncontrollable. And uncontrollable means uncertain. And uncertainty scares people who secretly rely on control to feel stable. This is where Jung becomes unavoidable. Because Jung would say, when someone cannot face the darkness within themselves, they project it outward. They become obsessed with being good. Not because they are good, but because they're afraid of what they'd see if they stopped performing goodness. They build a strong moral identity so strong, it keeps their shadow buried. But the shadow doesn't disappear. It leaks. It comes out in passive control, in subtle punishment, in emotional guilt, in manipulation disguised as kindness. And the most terrifying part? They can do all of it while still believing they're the hero. So when you feel uneasy around a nice person, you're not sensing evil. You're sensing an imbalance. You're sensing someone who doesn't feel safe unless they can shape you, unless they can manage you, unless they can keep you within their emotional jurisdiction. And that is not love. Love makes you bigger. Love expands you. Love respects your autonomy. Control shrinks you. Control edits you. Control calls itself care, but leaves you feeling less alive. So the real question becomes, how do you tell the difference between genuine kindness and kindness used as control? Because the difference is subtle, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. In the next part, we're going to expose the exact behavioral signs, the moments, the phrases, the patterns, the way the nice person reveals themselves, not through aggression, but through what they do when you finally stop obeying. Imagine you finally do it. You finally say no. Not aggressively, not cruelly, just calmly. A simple boundary, a simple truth. And for a second, everything goes quiet. Their faces don't change much. No shouting, no insults. They even smile. But the room suddenly feels colder. Not because they're angry, but because something inside them has turned off, like a light switch. And in that moment you realize their kindness was never a personality. It was a strategy. Because the second you step outside the role they assigned you, their goodness becomes conditional. And that's where the mask starts to slip. Here's the first sign you're dealing with a dangerous, nice person. 1. They punish you without looking like they're punishing you. They don't explode. They withdraw. They stop replying as warmly. They become busy. They shorten their messages. They stop being affectionate. And when you notice it, they deny it. "I'm fine. Nothing's wrong. I'm just tired." But your body feels it. Because humans don't just communicate through words. We communicate through energy, through presence, through tone. So even though they're still being polite, you feel like you're being quietly exiled. And you start scrambling to fix it. You start thinking, did I do something wrong? How can I make things normal again? Should I just apologize to keep the peace? That's how they train you. Not with force, with emotional weather. 2. Their kindness comes with an unspoken contract. This one is subtle, because they don't say it, but you feel it every time they help you. It's like their generosity is never free. Every favor creates debt. Every sacrifice becomes a leash, and they don't even need to remind you. You remind yourself. Because the moment you consider disagreeing, your brain flashes back to what they've done for you. They've been so good to me. They didn't have to help me. They're always there. So you stay quiet. You compromise your truth, and they stay powerful. A truly kind person gives without holding it over you. A dangerous, nice person gives so you'll never feel allowed to leave. 3. They always sound reasonable, even when they're wrong. This is why they're so hard to fight. They don't argue like a chaotic person. They argue like a lawyer, calm voice, logical tone. Even when they're being unfair, even when they're twisting reality, they speak with such controlled certainty that you start doubting yourself. And the danger isn't what they say, it's how they make you feel while saying it. They make you feel childish, unstable, emotional, like you're the one who needs to calm down, like you're the one who's overreacting. And when someone constantly frames you as irrational, you eventually stop defending yourself. You start shrinking. You start apologizing even when you're right. That's how they win without raising their voice. 4. They only support you when it benefits their identity. They love supporting you as long as you still need them, as long as you're still beneath them, as long as you still orbit them. But the moment you start becoming independent, the moment you start outgrowing their influence, their support turns strange. They start worrying. They start cautioning. They start advising. They start predicting your failure. Not because they hate you, but because your growth threatens their position. And this is where their niceness reveals its true purpose. They were never trying to build you up. They were trying to keep you safe inside their control. 5. They use guilt like a remote control. This is the signature move. They don't command you. They make you feel guilty until you obey. They'll say, "I guess I just care too much. I'm always the one who tries. I thought you were different. I wouldn't do that to you." They don't say, "You're bad." They imply it. And implication is stronger than accusation, because accusations can be argued against. But implication sinks into the subconscious like smoke. It makes you feel ashamed without knowing exactly why. And shame is the easiest emotion to control, because when someone feels shame, they'll do anything to escape it, even betray themselves, even destroy their own boundaries, even abandon their own future, just to feel forgiven again.
6. They are kind in public, but confusing in private. This is a huge one. In public, they're perfect, charming, helpful, warm. Everyone sees them as the good ones, but in private, you feel something else. A tension, a subtle dominance, a constant need to be right, a constant need to steer the emotional atmosphere, a constant need to make sure you stay within the invisible limits. And if you ever mention it, they act shocked. Hurt you? I would never hurt you. I'm the only one who's been good to you. I've done nothing but support you. This is where the trap becomes deadly, because the nicer they appear outwardly, the crazier you feel inwardly. That split makes you doubt reality, and once you doubt reality, you become controllable. 7. They make you feel like love must be earned. This is the deepest sign, the most heartbreaking one, because you start living like a performer. You start treating love like a test, like you must pass the exam to deserve warmth. You must say the right thing, react the right way, stay calm, stay grateful, stay reasonable. And the moment you slip, the warmth disappears. Not aggressively, quietly, like you've been downgraded in their heart. And you find yourself chasing the version of them that used to feel safe. You become addicted to restoring their approval. And that's when you're fully caught. Because when you start chasing someone's approval, they don't even need to imprison you. You've already handed them the keys. So here's the brutal truth. A dangerous, nice person is not dangerous because they're evil. They're dangerous because they're invisible. They hurt you without leaving bruises. They dominate you without looking dominant. They control you without appearing controlling. They keep their hands clean and your soul exhausted. Now the question is, what do you do when you realize the kindest looking person in your life might be the most psychologically unsafe one? Because knowing the pattern is one thing, escaping it is another. In the final part, we'll talk about how to break free without guilt, how to keep your mind clear, and how to reclaim your identity after being slowly edited down. Imagine you finally see it, not as a suspicion, not as a vague discomfort, but for clarity, like a fog lifting. You look back over the months, maybe years, and suddenly every moment makes sense. The strange guilt you couldn't explain, the way you always ended up apologizing first, the way your confidence faded, slowly, quietly, the way your personality became smaller, softer, easier, and you realize something that hits like a punch to the chest. You weren't being loved. You were being managed. You were being handled like a situation. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. But now comes the hardest part, because the real trap isn't their behavior. The real trap is what their behavior built inside you. A fear that leaving makes you the villain. A fear that standing up for yourself makes you mean. A fear that choosing yourself makes you selfish. And that's how people stay trapped. Not because they don't notice the danger, but because they're terrified of what freedom will cost them. So let's say you do the unthinkable. You begin to pull away. And the first thing that happens isn't relief. It's grief. Because there was a version of this person you loved.
a version that felt safe, a version that felt like home. Maybe they were kind during your lowest point. Maybe they were the only ones who showed up. Maybe they saved you once, and now you're standing in the wreckage of a painful truth. Someone can do good things for you and still not be good for you. That's the paradox that breaks most people, because your mind wants simple categories: good person, bad person, safe person, unsafe person. But reality doesn't work like that. Some people are warm and harmful at the same time. Some people comfort you, then control you. Some people heal you, then keep you wounded just enough to stay needed. And that's why escaping them feels like betrayal, because you're not leaving a monster, you're leaving a mask you once trusted. Here's the first step to breaking free.
1. Stop arguing with their image. Start looking at their patterns. A dangerous nice person survives because you keep focusing on their reputation. They mean well. They're not like that. They've helped me. They're not bad people. But your nervous system doesn't respond to someone's reputation. It responds to what happens after you express yourself. So ask the only question that matters. What happens to you when you're honest around them? Do you become freer, or do you become smaller? Do you feel more like yourself, or do you feel like you have to perform acceptable emotions? Because the truth is simple. Real love expands your identity. Control shrinks it, and your body already knows which one it is. 2. Accept the guilt. Don't negotiate with it. This is the part nobody wants to hear. You're going to feel guilty, even when you do nothing wrong, even when you set a healthy boundary, even when you leave politely, because the guilt was conditioned into you like a reflex. It's not proof you're evil, it's proof you were trained. So instead of trying to erase guilt, treat it like a storm passing through. Let it be there. Walk anyway, because freedom always feels cruel at first, when you've been taught your whole life that your needs are inconvenient. 3. Don't explain yourself too much. Dangerous, nice people feed on explanations. When you try to leave a controlling person, you naturally want to be understood. You want closure. You want fairness. You want them to finally get it. But dangerous, nice people don't need to understand you. They need to keep you talking long enough so they can twist your words into guilt. They'll ask questions that sound innocent. So what did I do wrong? Can you give me an example? I'm trying to learn. I just want to fix this. But watch carefully. Your explanations don't bring resolution. They bring more debate, more confusion, more emotional exhaustion. Because deep down, they're not looking for truth. They're looking for a way back into control. So keep it clean, not cold, just clean, short, calm, final. The more you explain, the more you invite them into your mind, and your mind is what they want access to. 4. Set boundaries that don't require their agreement. A lot of people fail here because they treat boundaries like contracts. They think, if I communicate well enough, they'll respect it. But boundaries are not negotiations. They are declarations. A boundary isn't, please stop. A boundary is, if this continues, I will leave. And here's the painful lesson. Some people only respect boundaries they cannot break. Not because they're evil, but because they're addicted to getting their way. So you stop hoping for their approval. You stop waiting for their understanding. And you act. Not out of anger, out of self-respect. 5. Prepare for the sweet reversal. This part is important. When the nice person feels you slipping away, they often change. They become softer, kinder, more affectionate. They suddenly apologize. They suddenly listen. They suddenly become the person you always wished they were. And it can feel like a miracle. But be careful, because this is often the most dangerous stage. Not because they're faking it, but because their kindness returns as a hook, like bait, just enough to pull you back in. So ask yourself a brutal question. Are they changing, or are they reacting? Real change takes time. Real change is consistent. Real change doesn't disappear the moment you're back under control. So don't get hypnotized by the temporary warmth. A cage can be decorated. It's still a cage. 6. Rebuild your identity like someone waking up from a spell. After being controlled by a nice person, you often feel empty. Not because you're broken, but because you've been living under someone else's emotional gravity for so long. You stopped choosing. You stopped trusting yourself. You stopped acting from your own center. So you rebuild slowly, by doing small things that remind you, I exist. You say what you mean. You stop apologizing for your emotions. You choose what you want without checking if it's allowed. You let people misunderstand you. You let silence happen. And you learn something powerful.
Being misunderstood is not the end of the world, but abandoning yourself is, because in the end, the most dangerous nice people teach you a twisted lesson, that love requires self-erasure, that peace requires silence, that kindness requires obedience. But real love doesn't ask you to shrink, real peace doesn't demand your disappearance, and real kindness doesn't come with invisible handcuffs. So if you've been dealing with someone who's gentle but controlling, sweet but suffocating, calm but psychologically dangerous, remember this: the nicest people aren't always safe. Sometimes the smile is the weapon. Sometimes the softness is the trap. Sometimes the good person mask is the perfect hiding place for power. And the moment you choose yourself, you'll feel guilty, you'll feel scared, you'll feel like you're doing something wrong. But on the other side of that guilt is your life, your real life, the one where you don't have to earn permission to exist.